All right, everybody. Welcome to an esoteric live stream, but a special one because I'm joined by my distinguished colleague and friend, which I'm really blessed to be able to call you both of those things, Angela. Really happy to be joined by Dr. Angela Puca, who I'm sure everyone who's watching this is also subscribed to Angela Symposium. If you're not, then you should go rush over there and get subscribed. And Angela, thank you for hanging out with me.
Oh, thank you, Justin. And yeah, I'm also very pleased to be calling you distinguished friend. No, distinguished colleague and friend.
It'd be good to
Obviously,
be
I had to mess it up.
it'd be great to be a distinguished friend.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, he's not just a friend; he's a distinguished friend. That's like people who have like more than one best friend. Like I know people are like, yeah, that's my best friend, and that's my best friend. I'm like, no, like
Yeah, I have two best friends, so
you
I
have to. I don't understand this. Like, um, it's a strange, it's a strange thing, but at any rate, it's great to have you back on and just sort of hang out and chat, and hopefully we can take some questions just from the audience. And it's great to have you on because one of the things that I always say, then how much I appreciate about Dr. Puka's work is that it's a great corrective on the channel, or my work is a corrective. You were here first on YouTube, and that we work in such interesting complementary ways. Like I work in some fields that you don't work in, and you work in some fields where I don't work in. And it's so great to, for instance, when I get questions about paganism or shamanism, I can be like, I have no idea, but I know a guy, and it happens to be not a guy. Um,
or
so
maybe
it's
I can be a guy. I don't know.
if you hey, you do you. But it's great to be able to be like, yeah, I don't know the answer to that question, but I bet I know someone who does. So it's great to have you on because especially when it gets into contemporary stuff and questions on paganism and stuff like that I just don't have any expertise in. It's great to be able to lean on your expertise, and it's very well welcomed. Also to say hi to a couple of folks in the chat. Jason is in the chat, who's just a great guy and friend of the channel, and also our shared friend Marco Visconti. Also, I just saw,
Hi,
yeah,
Marco.
um, in the
I
chat
think
as
we
well.
we're gonna see each other in March because he has a book signing in Leeds.
Oh, nice. Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to reading his book. It's, it's often hard to find good information on Thelema, and so it's good to have an expert who's been at it so long. Writing the book. It was great to have the conversation about the Bornless ritual, which was a lot of fun and a great compliment to this epic 3-hour conversation I had with Dr. Switza on the Acephalos. It's amazing. It's amazing how much, and I'm sure Angela knows this as well. How if you really get into something, how deep you can go on
Yeah.
even a short text like PGM 95.
Yeah, I think that that's why I always consider my videos as appetizers
Mhm.
and not as something comprehensive, because when it comes to these topics, probably when it comes to any topic, really, it's just endless what you can find out and what you can research. I think that when things seem simple, it's because you haven't researched them deep enough.
Right.
Because otherwise, it's like every single aspect, religious element, or even within spirituality, magic practices, every single thing has so much behind it.
No, right. And I always tell people, and I think I was saying this with Dr. Svitza, that I always think of esoterica episodes as the beginning of a journey. It's how you start learning about something. That if you think you know something after watching an esoterica episode, you're mistaken. Now you just have a lot of work to do. So, yeah, folks should always think of this kind of education as really the beginning of an education, not the culmination of one. So.
Yes.
All right. Let's jump into some questions. And I see a couple already popping up. And let's see here from Raymond Plant. Um, let's see. Does it seem feasible to maintain that evil is less a moral principle than the impact of an agonistic vertigo toward knowledge consistent with the death drive? All right. It's a mouthful. We got to put our philosopher hats on, I think, Angela. Uh,
Yes.
folks know. Uh, Angela is also trained in philosophy. We both trained in philosophy, so it's great to have another philosopher here.
Yeah, I have both my bachelor's and my master's in philosophy.
Yeah, I have my that's where my PhD is, and my MA and is in religious studies. So
Yeah, whereas for me, the PhD is in religious studies.
right, we're
Yes.
mirror images of each other in that way. All right, so let me read this again to make sure I'm following the question.
I'm not sure what he means by agonistic vertigo towards knowledge consistent with death drive. Does he mean that evil is a principle linked to spiraling down to death?
Yeah,
I'm not
that's
sure.
yeah, I'm not. Yeah, that's the other thing I'm not quite sure about. And you feel free to clarify, Raymond, what you're thinking in the chat, and we'll try to answer it. I mean, I guess it depends on what you want to do with evil here. I mean, I don't know how you think about this, Angela, but I guess I typically don't group evil in a moral category. I typically think of evil as a theological category. As a moral category, I would say something like something can be vicious, as the opposite of virtuous, or something
Or
could fail to,
harmful.
or
Harmful.
harmful, or yeah, like in a utilitarian system, or it can violate the categorical imperative. Um,
I'm a
but
utilitarianist, so
yeah, so it's the harm principle is how you would go. I'm not sure where I would land on that. Sometimes I think on a good day I'm a Kantian. Um,
uh
but
no, I think, yeah, I have debated that with myself a lot, whether I'm a Kantian or utilitarian, and that's where the philosophers come to the
yeah,
front.
actually,
Um,
I don't think I'm much more of a virtue ethicist. That's kind of where I land for complex reasons, but I really like virtue ethics in that way. Um, but yeah, I guess the question is that it depends on what you want to do with evil, and I guess we here would be, is it sort of a naturalistic theory of evil that you're getting at with the death drive? Because I'm assuming that's a reference to Freud, um, or is it a larger theological question? But I guess I would have to flesh it out more about what you might mean. But I don't typically think of evil as being, insofar as it is a moral principle, it's almost always a moral principle operating within a theological framework,
I
like
agree.
Thomism or something.
I agree. I think that in terms of ethics and morality, I see more concepts such as harming people or, um, fostering, the opposite of coalition and community and helping each other. So damaging each other, harming each other. That would be an ethical category that I would see similar to what in theological terms people would use the term evil.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe if you clarify a little more, we can say a little bit more about it. But question for Dr. Puca from Jason. Bauhaus
Well,
or Fields and Ethylene?
um
The Goth
difficult.
dilemma.
Yes, it's difficult because I love both. I think that I appreciate more Fields of Nephilim because of the aesthetic themes, but Bauhaus is obviously like a an anthem for for goth people.
Yeah, I think if you throw Bauhaus under the bus, you may get Goth canceled. They might send the Goth police after you, and it will be,
Very, very
um,
possible, yes.
yeah, that's dangerous territory.
I don't know if you guys know, and there's another group. This is more metal, perhaps, than goth rock, but it's called Therion.
Yeah, yeah.
And do you know them?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also like them, especially the album Gothic Kabbalah. And there are also songs, about the perennial Sophia and Shekinah. It's very, um, yeah, very aesthetic.
Western, yeah, it's Western esoteric.
Yes.
Also, I'll point out that Jason's rocking Esoterica merch in his profile picture,
Mm.
so I appreciate that. Um, this is one that I guess I'll maybe field. If any of the medieval alchemists succeeded in their works, what little evidence is there? I guess it depends on what you mean by their works. I mean, the medieval alchemists in alchemy did manage to succeed in a great deal of things, but I don't think any of them successfully created a philosopher's stone or engaged in substantial transmutation or made the alkahest or life extending, substantially life extending um, elixirs. That's also one big difference between Chinese alchemy and Western alchemy, is that Western alchemy never had the idea that you could live forever. Chinese alchemy thought that you could. They thought you could do it with a bunch of mercury, which turns out mercury does the opposite of make you live forever.
Mm. Oh, thank you for
But
saying that, because I got that question in my latest live stream and I didn't quite know the answer to that.
it's one of the big difference. I mean, it's one of the differences. I mean, but it's also interesting. This is a place where Christianity and alchemy really mixed in, because the idea was you could extend your life, but you couldn't live forever, because that would make you kind of Christ-like, and they really didn't like the idea of that. So that's a place where sort of a theological imposition was set upon medieval alchemy, where you could extend life, and there are famously cases of people allegedly like Flamel living for hundreds of years. But no, I don't think that they could do those things, and I think they couldn't because it's just not physically possible. They just had an incorrect theory of nature, and that's not to say they didn't get a lot done, but they couldn't get that done. But oh yeah, we said maybe we'll do a thing together on what's her name, the Italian female alchemist, Isabella Cortese.
Isabella Cortese, yeah.
Yeah. We should work on her. I actually have her book over there, a copy of her book from the 16th century. It's a neat book. Have you looked at it much?
No, not really. If it is an ebook, I can get it. Is it in Italian? I think
It's in
that you
Italian,
mentioned
yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's in Italian. I can find you a copy on archive.org. It's neat because it has like recipes for the Philosopher's Stone right next to recipes for like cosmetics, and it's really a great text that one, having been written by a woman alchemist, is pretty rare in general, but also just like you get alchemical theory right next to like how to make hand cream. So this like
It doesn't
it's a
surprise me, because there are other magical texts from the Renaissance, from the Italian Renaissance, that will also associate those kind of things. So it's
yeah,
not.
Della Porta's natural magic is like that.
Della
It'll have
Porta is also like that. It will
yeah.
have like things to avoid balding for men next to some kind of things
Here's how
that
to
we
live.
would.
Here's how to live
Yeah.
for a long time. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and the text Della Porta's text on natural magic is really fascinating because it represents a period after medieval Aristotelianism is no longer functioning as the standard epistemological paradigm, but before sort of Baconian scientific method emerges. And so it's in a fascinating period that was very brief in European history, where you have sort of like basically tricks that you could do, and they were called natural magic, but we recognize them now as early scientific experiments. But it's really a fascinating period where they've abandoned Aristotelianism, or at least some intellectuals have, but they haven't picked up Baconian, what we would now call the scientific method. And so it's this fascinating text that's neither one nor the other. And that's why when you read it, it's just sort of a disconnected series of natural magic, but where there's no methodological theory uniting it. Like why all this works, which is a terribly fascinating period in European intellectual history.
Well, for Della Porta, it was, and for other Renaissance magicians, they had kind of a theory of why that worked, and that was because that's how nature worked.
Mhm.
So they had the idea of Philosophia Naturalis and Magia Naturalis. So Philosophia Naturalis is the theoretical aspect, and Magia Naturalis is the practical one. And by Philosophia Naturalis, they meant what we would now mean as natural science, basically, before, the Baconian time, as you said.
Right.
So, for instance, in Della Porta, what he thought is that magic natural magic, because he would distinguish his type of magic from witchcraft, which is communing with entities, and that was considered forbidden. And he tried to make a case that his way of doing magic was actually acceptable, and he managed to escape the the fury of the of the Catholics because of that.
The Inquisition, yeah.
Yeah,
And it
the
was a terribly
Inquisition.
popular book.
Yeah. It was also translated in English. I
Mhm.
found a copy from I think the 1700s. I think it was 1620 or something like that.
Yeah, it was translated really early. I have a copy over there actually from the 17th century. It's a neat.
Yeah, but Della Porta's idea was another Neapolitan, by the way,
Yep.
like Giordano Bruno. But yeah, I think that many of those Italian magicians, including Tommaso Campanella, they had the sense that magic was applying the hidden book of nature. So they thought
Mhm.
that it is actually applying the laws of nature that we have yet to discover, or that we don't know yet. We don't know why they work, but it's not supernatural. They didn't believe that it was something supernatural. They believed that it was leveraging the laws of nature, just the ones that people didn't know yet or didn't know
Right.
at all.
Right. And it turns out they were right. And that's why, like, I mean, gravity and other kinds of forces are occult. They are in fact occult forces. So much so that that there are letters that Newton wrote where he's like, I don't want to be associated with this idea. It's like occultism. Like, I don't.
Mm.
This is like really dangerous ideas, that there are these unseen forces that are out there. And Newton was, he had to admit that he had discovered it, but at the same time he didn't want to be associated with it, which is again such an interesting 180-degree difference between how we think of Newton now. Like, he would have been super proud that he discovered all this stuff, but in fact he was very, for religious reasons, very uncomfortable with it. But turns out they were right. um, it's an interesting question. You may have some insight into. I know a little bit. Can you share any basic info on the deity Baphomet or reputable sources to learn more? It's really hard to find any good, unbiased info.
I have a video on Baphomet, so you can you can watch it. And there is as always with my video in the info box, you will find the references. Yeah, in that video I focus more on the Baphomet by Eliphas Levi, and the depiction and the meaning and where that comes from. But it's it is a bit of a difficult it's a difficult figure. I mean, that of the Baphomet, to trace the history back in an accurate way. But I
Right.
would recommend definitely watching that video. And there's a paper written by Julius Straube on Baphomet, which is quite long. I think it's like 30-40 pages for a paper, and you can find it for free online. So I would recommend check my video on that.
Yeah, and I think it was started as a mistranslation, right? It was started off as a mistranslation of Muhammad's name, and
Mm.
basically they stuck it on the Templars as a mechanism by which to for the King of France not to pay his debts, and so he murdered all of them. It's a very convenient way of not paying your debts, just murdering your debtors, your creditors, and so he just accused them all of worshiping this thing and being gay, basically, and murdered them all. Um, History is just a mess. um, it's just like, if it weren't horrible, I mean, it would be hilarious. If it weren't our history, if I were an alien, I would look at human history and be like, wow. Like, I mean, I guess Marx is like, first is tragedy, then is farce, something like that. But yeah, oh man, this is another one from Brandon. Can you please recommend which Aleister Crowley works to engage with first as a chaos magician? Any works by anyone who might be useful for someone interested in the meeting place of Vedanta and chaos magic? I'll let you field this one, Angela. I'm not a super big knowledgeable person about Crowley. Also, I think that Marco might be in the chat as well. Brandon, he's very knowledgeable about Crowley and could also point you in that direction as well. But I'm not knowledgeable on chaos magic and such and so forth.
So which I would recommend for First, well, I think that many people would probably give you a different answer to that. Different people would give you different answers to that. I think that foundational work is still magic in theory and practice, and chaos magic tends to be it's a tradition that focuses very much on results, especially after Peter Carroll and Sherwin and the tradition and the movement that came after that. So I think that so theoretically you could also be interested in Liber 777 and many other Crowley's books, but considering that those also contain correspondences, and in chaos magic there's more the idea, chaos magicians tend to have more the idea that you can create your own correspondences based on what you feel connected to. So if you feel that to you the color blue resonates more with the element air, you would use that one as opposed to the more conventional association that you will find in standard correspondences or correspondences of a specific tradition. So it tends to be more individually tailored. So maybe that book is not the best one. I think magic in theory and practice, because it still it contains some philosophical elements that could be useful for a chaos magician, in terms of that that sort of sentiment that magic is for all, and there is that sort of the democratization of magic with Crowley, even though some people have kind of challenged his intention with that, because he seems to want to popularize and democratize magic, but at the same time his books are quite obscure. So and also, yeah, but we know that Crowley is an interesting character and full of contradictions. But yeah, I guess that I would recommend Magic in Theory and Practice, Liber 4.
I'll also say I was looking at Liber 777 the other day, just randomly looking at
As a
Crowley stuff.
pastime.
Yeah, just it's accidentally
as you do.
as I do. You'd be surprised that that's actually true. It's like I'm like, I haven't looked at Liber 777 a long time. It was part of this larger thing on Crowley and the Bornless one, but I will say that looking back at it, there's a lot of mistakes in there, especially when it comes to Hebrew stuff. I don't think Crowley understood Hebrew at all, and there are howlers of errors in there. Like things that he says mean things that don't mean anything like that, like mistakes in gematria. It's like you get
He
the
also
sense that
misunderstood Indian philosophy.
it's like he wants to shove the square peg in the triangular hole sometimes, and there's a bunch of stuff in there. Now I can pin that on Crowley, but I can also pin that on Bennett, because it really was Bennett that put together most of what became 777. I wonder if Bennett would come back later and look at 777 and think, whatever, because he was, he could by the end of his life he could read Sanskrit and Hindi and Pali and stuff fluently. So, but anyway, that's just a side note that the Kabbalah of Liber 777 is interesting.
Yeah, I'm also curious in the meeting of Vedanta and chaos magic, the non-dualism. Well, the non-dualism is the Advaita Vedanta, actually. So the Vedanta means in Sanskrit end of Veda. It's the Upanishad, basically. And it's one of the 6 darshana in Indian philosophy.
Frater Zygmunt, both of you. Thank you, Zygmunt. Where does the idea of microcosm, macrocosm, and that the human body reflects the universe originate? Reading a Manly P. Hall book about it, and I'd like to be more informed opinion. I'd say the Stoics are the first people to really develop. The Stoics are the first people to develop the idea that there's a system of sympatheia that exists in the world, and the human body is part of that network of sympatheia. I think that the human body be reflecting that universe is also. You see it a little bit in Stoicism, but I think you see it most clearly in I think the Hermeticists are the first people to really develop that, where there's the unknown God, and there's mind, and then mind creates the universe, and the human body is sort of like a nexus of all of those things. And then that way, the human body is a microcosm of the macrocosm. But that's also Hermeticism leaning on Stoicism. Hermeticism leans heavily on Stoicism, actually. The middle Stoa, which is a little weird, kind of Platonizing Stoicism. But I would say that primarily the idea comes originally out of the Stoa, and then it's really taken up in a more religious way in the Hermetic corpus. That ring
Yeah.
true to you, Angela?
Yeah, I agree. And I will also recommend watching my video on Iamblichus and Plotinus, and Neoplatonism, because I mentioned the concept as well, that it comes from Stoicism. And yeah, I think I agree with what you said, Justin. It is a Stoic concept, but the way it's understood now by magic practitioners is more the Hermetic development than the Stoic inception.
Yeah, there's an entire episode that I want to make, and I don't know when I'm going to make it. Now that I say it, I'll probably make it, in a few weeks. But just the degree to which Western esotericism relies on Stoicism, both for the idea of sympatheia, but also the idea of esoteric hermeneutics. That there's this big thing in Plato about what to do with the myths that are outrageous. When the myths say outrageous things, Plato just argued we should get rid of those parts, or we should at least edit them and censor them so that people can't see them. The Stoics had a totally different answer, and their answer was, no, we read them when they literally say something outrageous. There must be a deeper meaning by which they say something more profound that isn't obvious. And that shift toward esoteric hermetic or esoteric hermeneutic, I don't think there is Western esotericism without that move. And in many ways, the Stoics pioneered that move, because not Plato. Plato really wanted to get rid of them, and it was the Stoics who introduced that idea that would eventually be taken up by other people. But in those two cases, the idea of sympatheia and the idea of esoteric hermeneutics, I think, are indispensable for thinking about Western esotericism, and they really come out of the Stoics, which I think is we typically think of so much coming out of the Neoplatonists, but we don't typically think of the Stoics because they're materialists and rationalists or whatever. But they certainly have a huge impact on the development of Western esotericism.
Yeah, and also the idea of antipatheia, which is close to that of sympatheia. So sympatheia is the attraction between things, the fact that there are things that are connected, and antipatheia is the things that are repulsed from each other. So it's the movement of attraction and repulsion that is in all things.
Yeah, I love the Stoics. I had a whole class
Now
ago.
they seem to be popular among
Fake Stoicism among like basic dudes. I'm like, how many
among alpha males?
Yeah, the alpha males are there. I'm like, how many of these alpha sigma males sitting in Romanian jails are experiencing strong assent to cataleptic impressions? I'm like, you're just talking about like not feeling your feelings. That's not Stoicism. Stoicism is about strong assent to cataleptic impressions, which again, it's just like the Reddit version of Stoicism it's really Chrysippus is rolling in his grave. All right. Here we go. You knew it was coming. Angela, you get to field this question.
Yay.
Do you think
No, I haven't read it yet, so I don't know.
I think guys like do you think pre-Wiccan initiatory witchcraft existed and continues to exist? It's basically, I think it's basically a version of the Margaret Murray thesis, i.e. Chumbley's Cultus Sabbati and the Horseman's Word and Toadman. Later maybe Balk. I guess we'd also include things like the Benedenti in Italy that Ginsburg introduced most of us to. I mean, I'll say what I will from at least from the historical perspective. There's no evidence of of um, of survivals from the pagan world into what inquisitors called witchcraft, maleficia, specifically that term maleficia. And what little evidence we do have is mostly from people being tortured, and so it's highly unreliable. So I don't. Now that's not to say there weren't ritual practitioners or cunning people, certainly those existed, right? Um, but I don't think that there was a that there were. I don't think that there's evidence of survivals in a strong sense, and that those survivals were taken up and confused or conflated with what the Inquisitors called maleficia.
Yeah, and I feel kind of bad that I'm always mentioning my videos, but that at least, will give more of a background because obviously our answers here are kind of brief. So I have a video called This Week at the Oldest Religion, where I talk about the thesis advanced by Margaret Murray in the witch cult in Western Europe and the God of the Witches. And that was kind of foundational for Wicca and for other witchcraft traditions to claim that there was a continuous, unbroken line of practices from the pagan, pre-Christian times that survived, for the centuries and arrived to today. And that thesis has been largely disproven in the 70s, but even in her own time, nobody believed her. Garner was literally the only one who believed in Murray's thesis. So the Ethnographical Society, nobody believed her. No other scholar supported that theory. That's why I always say that since I talk so much about academic scholarship on my channel, I always say that science and academic knowledge doesn't work in isolation. It works in collaboration. That's why the peer review process is so important. So, or, if you have that one study, a small scale study, doesn't mean anything if you don't have the supporting evidence from other studies. So, yeah, it's been largely disproven. And so, whether there were pre-Wiccan initiatory witchcrafts, well, that's possible, but that they continue to the present day, that's something that is extremely unlikely because we just don't have historical evidence. We could just have speculations, but we don't have any historical evidence to support that claim. And as I always say, that doesn't mean that it is any less important or any less valid because, why the fact that somebody is older should validate it more. Maybe, there are things that are very old and are not that valuable, like, patriarchy, for instance. You don't say, oh, that's millennia old, so it means that it is valid and true and beneficial. So I think that contemporary paganism and contemporary witchcraft is extremely fascinating, but obviously these claims have no historical backing.
Yeah, I often find this discourse around ancestors and tradition very interesting, considering I come from a tradition that's all about ancestors. But I've always said that tradition, when it's good, it's great, but when it's not, it's just like peer pressure from dead people. And I think we all learned good lessons from our parents about giving into peer pressure. And why should I give into peer pressure from dead people? um, like I don't know. So, but yeah, and also again, I think it's interesting that even with cases like Ginsburg's on the Benedanti, like they actually were shapeshifting to go fight witches. Like I think that for whatever reason that part gets lost in the story. That they thought of themselves as turning like shapeshifting, not because they were engaging in witchcraft, but because they were engaging in fighting it. Which, for whatever reason, it's always struck me as ironic that people will use that example as an example of perhaps a survival of a kind of shamanism or something that existed in the survival from the pre-Christian period. But I'm like, yeah, insofar as it survived precisely in the interest of Christianity. That's not, it's a peculiar example if it is one. Um, Teeny Dakini, this is a great one. What are Dr. Puca's thoughts on the rites of Eleusis and the historical data showing women as the leaders of magical rites making a comeback through culture and books like The Immortal Key? Thank you. This is not a place where I'm not terribly learned about the rites of Eleusis as little as we know, aside from Alcibiades getting drunk and telling everybody what they were that time. That was pretty funny. He got in a lot of trouble for that.
Mm. Yeah, I don't think that I have an answer to that question, unfortunately. Um, I have studied the Rites of Eleusis, but it was so long ago that I wouldn't want to just give inaccurate information.
Yeah, and I think also that we can, with same with the oracle at Delphi, we can somewhat overstate the degree to which women were actually in control of that situation, of the Vestal Virgils, of the Vestal Virgins in Rome. Like they were powerful in a specific, very carefully curated sense.
Yeah, yeah. I think that
Um,
sometimes the role of women tends to be overestimated.
right. And they weren't like emancipated in any strong sense. I mean,
Yeah.
the girl that became the Oracle of Delphi didn't even choose; she was just basically kidnapped um, by the administrators there. So yeah, I think that again, this is a place where looking back to history to sort of get modern ideas of women emancipation or feminism. Um, I don't know that it pays great dividends because those are all examples of, and also the rites of Eleusis were very polarizing in the ancient Greek world. It wasn't like everybody was on board with them. Lots of people had lots of negative things to say about them. That they were basically foreign, that they weren't really Greek. That's ditto with the cult of Dionysus and all that stuff. We think of them as prototypically like part of Greek religion, but I think that the traditional cult would have actually been very. They would have been the relationship would have not been a copacetic one in some ways.
Makes me want to do a video on that though.
We always need a list of things we can collaborate on because I always love working with you, and if we can just like be like, hey, let's do a thing on, I don't know, the rites of Dionysius or Eleusis or whatever. Dan Trail also knows a lot about that stuff. He was a classics undergrad, so he comes out of the classics world, so he's pretty strong on that stuff. Thank you. Vocatus is a friend of both of our channels.
Yeah. Hi,
Um,
Mark.
yeah, thank you, Mark, for your always generous support of our work. Folks making it possible that we can do this kind of work of taking questions and making videos and um, this kind of stuff. Um, all right. Let me see. There's some other ones. A little bit of time left. Yeah, let me scroll up and get some folks who did not do super chats, just because I really want to always again make sure that I try to get as many all the super chats, because obviously someone's paying to have their question answered, um, but also I really want to be able to get folks who just shouldn't have to be able to pay money to get a question answered. This is maybe one for you, Angela. This is more of a 20th century question that I don't have a lot of knowledge about. Can you discuss the U.S. cultural revolution of the early 70s as a force popularizing paganism and witchcraft and the roots of the same? I would extend that also not just to U.S. culture, but UK culture too.
Yeah,
Maybe
but I
even more,
think
maybe.
yeah, but when it comes to paganism, I think that actually the US was particularly central in that respect because um yeah, the birth of contemporary paganism came from Britain and from Wicca, but then in during the 70s, as Astro was saying, there is there is kind of it takes roots in specific types of movements, in the gay and women liberation movements, and it kind of starts um, gathering connotations that are more feminist and more in a way also political, in that I hear many American pagans and American witches, even from the Gen Z generation, that talk about witchcraft. And I have an interview on the channel where we discuss that. They talk about witchcraft as something that is inherently political and inherently rebellious and against status quo. And I think that those are all elements that paganism acquired during the 70s in the US. And then it kind of, you have the Dianic movement, for instance, and other pagan movements that tend to be quite feminist, or even even the ones that are not openly feminist, they are very open to LGBT plus communities, and they have a very open-minded environmentalist approach to the practice and to the religion. So I'd say that all those elements where the American 70s and the culture that was there kind of reshaped a little bit paganism and Wicca, and then it went back to Europe and obviously in other countries as well in that reshaped form. So, for instance, in Italy, the when paganism arrived to Italy, which was in the 90s, 2000s, it was more the American version than the British version. So I think that that helped a lot the popularization of paganism and witchcraft too, because it was seen as a force of rebellion against. So it wasn't just about a religion; it was also subversive, and it was a way of fostering that sense of being subversive. And um, yeah, it was a part of a larger counterculture, I would
Mhm.
say. So yeah, definitely, I think that the American 70s were quite important historically in reshaping paganism, giving different connotations, and also it was, as you say, popularizing force because it was seen as associated to certain countercultural ideals, and that allowed for Wicca and paganism to get more traction in the US because of that association that was created.
It's a great answer. Yeah, I don't have anything um, to add there. Thank you, Angela. Um, Jim's asking, can you recommend books as an introduction or survey of Stoicism? I will say that this is what I was looking at just a second ago. Um, that Tad Brennan's The Stoic Life is absolutely the best book on Stoicism that's out right now. Like all those popular books on Stoicism are just like balderdized versions of Stoicism.
Mm.
Brennan, if you want to learn about historical Stoicism and the arguments that they actually made and the arguments against them, for instance, famously the lazy argument that was made against Chrysippus, um, Tad Brennan really, I think, provides absolutely the best introduction to historical Stoicism that existed, which is it's a fantastic book. It's a little
Mm.
dense because he's a analytic philosopher, but it's really good. And also just reading the Stoic fragments. I mean, um,
I
there's
noted it down because now I want to read it because
it's
I studied the Stoics in Italian and ancient Greek, so
the yeah. I
I'm
mean,
not, not for everything I'm familiar with the English versions of
it's
things.
really good. I mean, and it's a pity because Stoicism, despite the fact that it was terribly influential, um, so little works survive. Chrysippus, Diogenes Laertius, as much as we can believe Diogenes Laertius, like he said that Chrysippus wrote 705 books. Nothing survives, like
Mm.
fragments, like so it's amazing, aside from a little bit of Seneca and stuff like that. But we have nothing. We have just, Zeno wrote an entire book called The Republic, famously argued in defense of cannibalism and incest in that book. And that was really scandalous at the time, scandalous now, but it doesn't survive. Um, Virtually nothing of the Middle Stoa survives. But anyway, the Brennan book is, in my opinion, the best book in terms of reconstructing Stoicism as a systematic philosophy. That's what's good at the analytic people are good at that kind of thing. God bless them. But that'd be my recommendation. The literature on Stoicism is not good, mostly, at least popular literature. Thank you, Nick.
Oh, hi, Nick. Long time no see. He's a patron, but yeah, I look forward to seeing you in the community.
Nice,
Thank you
nice.
for the birthday wishes. When
It's
is
funny.
your birthday? I think that yours is coming up, isn't
Yeah,
it?
my birthday's it's
Is it the
either the
ninth?
9th or the 10th of
Uh,
February. It's not clear exactly when. There's some debate apparently about when I was born. It's either the 9th or the 10th. The federal government says I was born on the 10th, so I'm going to go with that. But yeah, it's funny. Our birthdays are pretty close together, actually.
Two Aquarians.
It's true. Yeah, as much as we're Aquarians, I guess we're not close to the cusp because otherwise it'd probably moved on. We're probably something else by now. Do a lecture on the Book of Allogenes. Yes, yeah. Actually, I want to do a. There's 2 Gnosticism episodes that I really want to do soon. One is on the Platonizing Sethian tradition, which of Allogenes and Zostrianos are the 2 principal expressions. In fact, Zostrianos is the longest book recovered in Nag Hammadi. It's also very fragmentary, sadly. But I want to do one on that, and also want to do an episode on what's called the Jewic form of Gnosticism, represented by Pistis Sophia and the Book of Jew, which doesn't get any attention. No one talks about Pistis Sophia and the Book of Jew, even though they represent a completely distinct form of Gnosticism that is not Sethian or whatever. So I want to work on both of those. Folks, if you're not also following Jason's channel, which Jason, you should put in the chat if you can. Jason's been interviewing a bunch of top scholars on this kind of stuff, and he's going to have Dylan Burns, who I had the pleasure of meeting once in Amsterdam, who's a scholar of Gnosticism. Excellent book, The Apocalypse of the Alien God, maybe one of the best books on Gnosticism to come out recently. He's going to have him, Dylan, on his channel soon, and I'm looking forward to that conversation. No, that's an excellent book, by the way. And also, if you're interested in Pistis Sophia and this Jewic theory of Gnosticism, there's a great book called Pistis Sophia and the Books of Jew as Handbooks to Eternity. Both really excellent books. By Brill, though, so just sell your kids to get it.
Don't talk badly about Brill.
Why shouldn't I talk badly about Brill?
Who
Angela?
knows?
Who knows? Would it be the case that you might be have a conflict of interest in this conversation?
Maybe.
No, you should get your book published any way you can. I'm happy. I'm super happy for you. I won't be able to afford it, but I'll look at it online.
I'm sure you will find online anyway. So.
I'll just admire it from their website. All right, let's get a couple more. Angela, you said you could only stay for about an hour, so I'm going to keep you any longer than that. But thank you, Kat Shadwick. Appreciate that. This is an interesting idea. Yeah, can we have some kind of convention after you build up this proto community a bit more? I pay out the nose. You had Brill money then to have these kind of conversations in person. There's money and there's Brill money.
I think it's actually a great idea. We should have like some kind of conference type of event.
That'd be great. I mean, the only problem is that we'd all have to, we have to pick a location.
Yeah, that would be the most difficult thing.
Yeah, picking. I would actually argue we should do it. Maybe somewhere that's totally separate from all of us. Like do it in Egypt.
Nobody would come. I think that we should probably do it in the US, just because I think that most of our audiences are from the US.
It's probably true. Yeah, could do it. Yeah, I mean, go out to Salem or something. Something like that.
I like that. I've never been, so
it's like a giant tourist trap. I mean, it's cool because it's Salem, but imagine like, I mean, maybe if you're a family of if you're a fan of like kitsch, you would like it because it's like witch kitsch to the extreme. So you may like it. Definitely don't go anywhere near there anytime near Halloween because it's just like completely impossible to even move. Mark says he'll photocopy the book for me. Your book, Angela. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. At least you will buy it.
Now that they took down BOK.org or whatever, the damn FBI took it down. There's no way I'm going to be able to get these Brill books.
Yeah, the problem. I mean, still, Brill is kind of a leader in the publishing of esoteric books. That's the thing.
The esoteric monopoly. They're the esoteric mafia, these people.
Also Oxford University Press.
Yeah, Oxford has they're much, I mean, I will say they're a little more affordable, but look, Wouter Hanegraaff's recent book is still like over $100. and I think even with the 20% off code we got, it was still over $100 at ESWI. It's like, um, they're proud of their books. I mean, I guess they'll come out in paperback and be a little cheaper, but
I always find it funny how academic books are so expensive when if you're an author and you publish in a non-academic publisher, you will earn so much more. So
yeah, well, they're it's the print runs are so low. I mean, they're printing them basically for libraries to buy them. They're not printing for me to buy them. And I mean, institutional buying. I mean, like I'll give you an example of this at the level of antiquarian books. When I go to, well, I'll be in New York at the end of April for the big New York Antiquarian Book Fair. If you're there buying on the part of an institution like Harvard or whatever, you're going to pay 3 times what a private person will pay, because the idea is that they have these giant endowments, and Harvard does. I think their endowment's larger than the GDP of Guatemala. And so what the Brill price is institutional buying. And it's just that the expectation is institutional libraries can spend a ton of money on these books, and they are printed really, really well. I mean, they are made to last a long time, but you're talking about small print runs and institutional buying. They don't have me in mind when they're setting prices and making their book products. Still no excuse though. They should just buy a big copy. I would get them a big copying machine. We would crowdfund them a copying machine just so they could just do
a
the
paperback
cheapest
version.
the cheap paperback version, so that I can read the damn things.
But even ebooks are super expensive,
Exactly,
even if you buy the ebook, so it can't be the printing.
Yeah, it's not. It's definitely not just the printing. It's the expectation that institutions are buying these books. They even wanted to charge me like half or 75% of the price to even get a desk copy, because I was actually teaching one of their books. I'm like, desk copies are always free, but not with Brill, the pirates of the esoteric book industry. I wonder if they know how much shade I throw at them. I bet they don't care. They're sitting. I mean, when you sit on your,
should I tell them?
yeah, please. Someone should do
No,
a
I
super
won't.
cut. Someone should do a super cut of every time I throw shade at Brill, make it and send it to them. Then they would just tell me like, "Yeah, that's great. Now I'm going to cut it with my pile of money."
No, I don't know, because I know knowing people that work with Brill, they are very nice people. So I feel like I should defend them.
I'm sure that they're nice. I mean, it's a Dutch. I love the Dutch. But again, I would just I bet we could crowdfund them one of these print on demand machines, and just like, could I get the print on demand version of Angela's book for like $30 or something? I don't know. All right, let's get maybe 1 or 2 more questions, and maybe Angela could call it a day. All right, let me see. Wow, even with the slow mode on, there are so many comments. You guys are amazing. I really appreciate all the thoughtful comments and all the things that you guys include. Let me scroll back down. All right, I'm not seeing any. And Brill does have, yes, to Jason's credit, they do have a lot of open access stuff. That's true. Again, but like, it's the preponderance of the issue. And they just lure you in. It's just like drug dealers. They're like, "Here, kids, you want some drugs?" And you're like, "Yeah." And like, "Here, kids, you want some esotericism?" And they get you hooked. Now you have to spend $600 on some book by the Summa Perfectionis by Geber or something. They're just getting you hooked on esotericism with the free stuff. I know that trick. I've seen those guys. Right. Let's see here. Daniel, enjoyed your collaboration on Platonism. JSTOR has an article, Neoplatonism and the Poetry of William Blake by John E. Brown, that draws parallels between Blake and Plotinus. Worth checking out. Yeah, absolutely. Dan Trail pointed this out, and I think he's right. And Dan Trail would know, was that Blake was pretty close to the community around Thomas Taylor, who obviously is one of the great Neoplatonists of contemporary times, modern times. And there's definitely the case that Blake is being influenced by Neoplatonism as probably being introduced in that circle, the Cambridge Platonists and all those guys. So yeah, that's a great point. It's a good. Yeah, I should check that article out. The
Mhm.
Neoplatonism was a lot of fun, Angela. I thought that was a great,
Yeah, me too. We enjoyed
Megatron.
making it. I was a bit worried it wouldn't come up well in terms of video quality because at the time I was in Italy, but I wanted to do it.
Yeah, it was great. I liked yours um, on Iamblichus and Plotinus. I think this is also a thing that people, including maybe me and maybe us, that we often also think of Neoplatonism as kind of a homogenous thing, when in fact they really disagree with one another, or they would have if Plotinus were alive, or when Iamblichus was around. That that they're it's an internally diverse school of thought,
Yes,
and it's a contemporary conception. They didn't think of themselves as Neoplatonists. We think of them as Neoplatonists.
that seems to always or almost always be the case. I mean, you don't know, you don't give yourself a name. It's always the other that give you a name, that gives you a name.
Yeah. And also these categories like Gnosticism and Neoplatonism, they often do just as much harm to understanding the text or the ideas as they help us. Like they become they can be helpful, but they can also be a real limiting factor for really getting into a deep understanding of them. But yeah, next time I come to the ESPY conference, I'm gonna make a Brill shirt.
What's gonna, what are you gonna have on that?
I don't know. It's gonna be some kind of like mild shade. But yeah, I should, because they always have they had a table there last time. I'm sure they'll have a table there this time. Um, Maybe I should just sit down and talk to them. We can have some negotiations. But no, I don't think we could even negotiate, because what do they say in Thucydides in the Melian debate, that the strong do what they can and the weak endure what they must?
Mm.
I don't think I have the chops to be able to negotiate. I can't bring anything to the table. So, all right, folks. This is a funny one. I just watched to hear Justin's jokes. I have no meaningful questions. I don't have any meaningful jokes. Maybe I'll just literally steal their logo and put it on an Esoterica shirt, and to be like, "Yep, this is what happens when you make your book so expensive. People just rip them off." Maybe I'll do that to violate their copyright before their very eyes. I should be more kind. I'm glad that they publish the books that they do, but thank you, Jacqueline. I'm glad you like my jokes. My my sense of humor. I appreciate it. All right, folks. Well, Angela, thank you for taking some time to come hang out with me and field some questions. I'm really glad that again, this is why it's so wonderful to have you on, because there's so many questions that I just don't have the expertise to feel, and it's really great to have you on where you're able to do that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I always love, to hanging out with you and, with people in the in the chat.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Well, folks, um, this is a busy week here at Esoterica. Like, we had the long conversation with Dr. Switza. Today, I'm getting to hang out with my wonderful friend and colleague, Angela Puca. Tomorrow, I'll be hanging out with Zevi to do our weekly Zohar study, which is a lot of fun. If you're interested in the foundational book of Kabbalah, it's a lot of fun to study this book. And so we get to, we've been studying it and making our way through the Yanuka section. So we'll be doing that. And then Friday, I have an episode on the Cathars coming out on the book of two
Wow,
principles. So
that's a lot.
it's a lot. It's a busy week. It's a full throttle esotericism this week. Angela, do you want to say anything about what you got coming out this week, or do you want to keep it secrets
Yeah,
until you
no, no,
drop
no.
it?
I can, no, I can say it. I have a video on D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, coming up on Sunday, and it's gonna be kind of a review of the academic studies on D&D, both in terms of the psychology and religious elements in D&D. And yeah, I'd be happy to see you guys on my channel, Angela Symposium, and subscribe and let me know that you come from this conversation in the comments on one of my videos.
Yeah,
So
definitely check out Angela if you're not subscribed, and also make sure to take a look at Angela's Patreon. We all got to support each other, support your local creative content, educational content creator.
local.
And yeah, local. Hey, you're in the room with me as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
Um, we're both in a box, within very close to each other in this box. So definitely support support the folks that you like their content. My friend Russell is in the chat. Uh, Russell and I played Dungeons and Dragons way back in
Oh
the
wow.
ancient days of what middle school, early high school. We played Dungeons and Dragons a long time ago. I still have one of your character sheets, Russell. Um,
We need
uh,
to do a collaboration on Dungeons and Dragons.
yeah, we need to do a collab on D&D. Two, we should also just like someone who has a Twitch channel. We should just like do
I
a
have a Twitch channel,
you
but
have a
I
Twitch.
don't. I have a Twitch channel, but I don't use it very much. I just stream on there. Since I have the option of streaming on, numerous platforms, I create the Twitch channel, but I
Yeah.
don't really curate it that much.
Yeah, well, maybe we can just use. We could just do it on Streamyard. Maybe we should schedule a Dungeons and Dragons game with me and you and anyone who wants to get involved. I think that would be hilarious. So that'd be great. Maybe we can plan that one day. It'd be a fun. Maybe for my birthday, I'll make people play Dungeons and Dragons with me, or something like that.
You will make people. That sounds like you
You
will
get
need us
magic
to.
powers on your birthday. You can compel people to do things. At least that's what my family believes. Um, Awesome. Thank you, Barbara, for the super sticker. All right, folks. Well, I'm going to let Dr. Puca go eat dinner or whatever they're going to do. But again, thank you, Angela, for hanging out with me and for sharing some of your expertise with these fine folks in the chat.
Thank you so much for having me on, and I hope to see you guys on my channel too.
Absolutely. Well, folks, go check out Angela's Symposium, and I'll see you maybe tomorrow for a Zohar study. Take it
Maybe.
easy.
I mean,
I'll be there, and Zevi will be there. Bli Neder, but I'm not sure other
oh
people will.
yeah, you're not sure if they're gonna be there.
We'll be there. Like I said, Bli Neder, but hopefully other people will be there too. So maybe see folks tomorrow. Take it easy. Have a great afternoon.